This is a true story of how a real Nazi counterfeiting operation dumped into an Austrian lake became the foundation for 80 years of treasure hunting myths, media circuses, and broken dreams. In the final weeks of World War II, SS officers loaded trucks with wooden crates containing printing plates, documents, and millions of perfectly forged British pound notes, products of Operation Bernhard, the largest counterfeiting scheme in history, and sank them in Lake Toplitz, a dark, isolated lake in the Austrian Alps. When German journalist Wolfgang Lühr and his diving team pulled £73 million worth of fake banknotes to the surface in 1959, the discovery ignited a legend that refuses to die. If the Nazis dumped counterfeit money there, surely they also dumped gold, stolen art, and secret documents worth billions. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Decades of searches, dives that cost lives, radar scans, and government excavations have found no Nazi gold, only the wreckage of myths built on greed, hope, and our desperate need to believe that evil leaves treasure behind. What you're about to hear is the story of what was really hidden in that lake, why people keep searching for treasure that doesn't exist, and how a few grains of documented fact can feed an entire industry of fantasy. This is the truth behind Nazi gold myths, late war desperation, why the Nazis started hiding everything. Let me take you back to early 1945, when Nazi Germany was collapsing. The Red Army was advancing from the east. Allied forces were pushing through France and into Germany from the west. Cities were being bombed into rubble. The thousand-year Reich was crumbling after just 12 years, and everyone in the Nazi leadership knew it. In this chaos, desperate orders went out. Move assets, burn records, hide anything that could be used as evidence in war crimes trials. Art was evacuated from museums and hidden in salt mines. Gold reserves were dispersed to secret locations. Documents were destroyed. And certain operations, especially the illegal and criminal ones, needed to disappear completely. One of those operations was codenamed Bernhard. It was the largest counterfeiting scheme in human history, and if the Allies discovered the full extent of it, the men who ran it would hang. Operation Bernhard began in 1942 under the direction of SS Major Bernhard Kruger. The plan was simple and audacious: forge millions of British pound notes so perfect that they were indistinguishable from genuine currency, then flood Britain with the fake money to destabilize the British economy and finance the war. Kruger assembled a team of 140 Jewish prisoners, engravers, printers, artists, and forgers, from Sachsenhausen concentration camp near Berlin. These men were told they would live as long as they were useful. Their task: create counterfeit 5-ton to 10s, 20 pounds, and 50 pounds notes that could fool even the Bank of England. The operation succeeded, beyond expectations. Between 1942 and 1945, the Sachsenhausen unit produced over 134 million counterfeit pounds, about 130 million pounds, worth roughly $520 million at the time. The forgeries were perfect. They matched the paper quality, the ink composition, the watermarks, and even the serial number system used by the Bank of England. The plan to airdrop millions of fake notes over Britain to cause hyperinflation was never executed. The Luftwaffe didn't have the resources, and British intelligence had gotten wind of the scheme. Instead, the counterfeit money was laundered through neutral countries like Switzerland and used to pay spies, buy black market weapons, and fund covert operations. By April 1945, as Allied forces closed in, the SS faced a terrifying problem. They had millions of pounds in fake notes, printing plates, documents, and evidence of the entire operation, all of which constituted war crimes. If captured, the men involved would be prosecuted for counterfeiting, fraud, and economic warfare. The order came down: destroy everything. Lake Toplitz, the real dump site. Lake Toplitz sits in the Salzkammergut region of Austria, surrounded by mountains and dense forest. It's a dark, eerie place, about 1.9 kilometers long, 400 meters wide, and up to 103 meters deep. The water is icy cold, with almost no oxygen below 20 meters, meaning nothing rots or decays in the depths. It's the kind of place where you could hide something and be reasonably sure no one would ever find it. In the final days of April 1945, SS Lieutenant Ernst Hansch received orders to transport several trucks full of wooden crates to Lake Toplitz. He was told to sink them in the deepest part of the lake. Hansch didn't ask questions. By then, following orders without objection was how you stayed alive. The crates were loaded with counterfeit British pound notes, printing plates, engraving equipment, and documents related to Operation Bernhard. Some crates were tied to wooden floats and sunk with ropes so they could theoretically be recovered later. Others were simply thrown into the water and allowed to sink to the bottom. Not all the material made it to the lake. Some crates were dumped in the Traun and Enns rivers on the way. Others were burned. But enough ended up in Toplitz that when divers finally descended decades later, they found a fortune. Just not the fortune anyone expected. The SS also used the lake during the war as a testing site for underwater weapons and other secret equipment. This added another layer of mystery and danger. If the Nazis had used Toplitz for secret military projects, what else might be down there? Think about what this means. The Nazis dumped real material, millions of pounds in counterfeit notes, real printing equipment, real documents, into a remote Austrian lake in 1945. That part is documented, proven, undeniable. But from that single grain of truth, an entire mythology grew. The 1959 discovery: counterfeit millions, not gold. In 1959, German magazine Der Stern financed a diving expedition to Lake Toplitz, led by journalist Wolfgang Lühr. Rumors had been circulating for years that the Nazis had dumped treasure in the lake: gold, stolen art, secret documents. Lühr was determined to find out. What he found were wooden crates filled with counterfeit British pound notes, millions of them. Perfectly forged 5, 10 tans, 20 funds, and 50 pounds notes from Operation Bernhard. The crates also contained printing plates, engraving tools, and documents detailing the Bank of England's numbering system. The notes were so perfect that collectors and historians who examined them later confirmed they were indistinguishable from genuine Bank of England currency. The forgeries were so good that the Bank of England had stopped releasing certain note designs after the war and introduced new security features specifically because of Operation Bernhard. But there was no gold, no stolen art, no secret Nazi fortune. In 1963, another expedition ended in tragedy when a diver died in the lake. His two companions on the expedition included a former Nazi secret agent and a German businessman mentioned in connection with counterfeit gold coins. The Austrian government, alarmed by the death and the ongoing treasure hunting frenzy, mounted an official month-long search of the lake. They recovered more boxes of counterfeit notes, more printing equipment, and remnants of underwater weapon testing. But no gold, no treasure. After the 1963 death, the Austrian government banned all further diving in Lake Toplitz. The ban remains in effect today. The official reason is safety. The lake is dangerous, the water is cold and murky, and the risk of death is high. But the ban also serves another purpose. It keeps the myth alive. As long as no one can search the lake, people can keep believing there's treasure down there. Many of you have written in comments asking, why doesn't the government just drain the lake or use modern technology to scan the bottom and settle the question once and for all? The answer is complicated. Draining the lake would be an environmental disaster and prohibitively expensive. Modern sonar and ground-penetrating radar have been used, but the lake's depth, the layers of silt and organic material, and the interference from old military equipment make clear imaging difficult. And perhaps most importantly, the Austrian government has no incentive to definitively prove there's nothing there. The myth brings tourists, media attention, and international interest. The truth, that it's just a dumping ground for counterfeit money, is far less exciting. Operation Bernhard, the real story behind the myth. To understand why people keep searching for Nazi gold in Lake Toplitz, you need to understand just how extraordinary Operation Bernhard was. It was the largest counterfeiting operation in history, a fact confirmed by Guinness World Records. Over 9 million counterfeit British notes were produced, with a face value of £130 million. The operation involved 140 Jewish prisoners working under threat of death, using the finest engraving equipment, the best paper, and ink formulated to match British standards exactly. The forgeries were used to pay spies across Europe. Counterfeit notes from Operation Bernhard were given to Eliesa Bazna, codenamed Cicero, a Turkish agent who worked as valet to the British ambassador in Ankara and sold British secrets to the Germans. £100,000 in fake notes was used to obtain intelligence that helped plan the Gran Sasso raid in September 1943, which freed Italian dictator Benito Mussolini after he had been arrested by his own government. The counterfeit money was laundered through Friedrich Schwend, an SS officer who ran an illegal currency and smuggling network. Schwend exchanged the fake pounds for genuine Swiss francs and US dollars, taking a cut of 8.3% for himself. He used the money to buy black market weapons from Yugoslav partisans and sell them to pro-Nazi groups in Southeast Europe. When the war ended, the Jewish prisoners who had worked on Operation Bernhard were supposed to be executed to eliminate witnesses. They were transported to Ebensee concentration camp to be killed. But on May 6, 1945, just 2 days before Germany's surrender, American forces liberated the camp and the prisoners survived. One of those survivors, Jakov Levy, later gave counterfeit pounds to the Tilhas Tizig Geschäften, a small group formed from the British Army's Jewish Brigade. They used the fake notes to buy equipment and smuggle displaced Holocaust survivors into mandatory Palestine, defying the British blockade. The counterfeit money intended to destroy Britain's economy ended up helping to establish Israel. Here's the irony. Operation Bernhard produced real treasure, millions of pounds in currency that could have been spent, laundered, and used. But because it was fake, because it was evidence of a crime, it had to be destroyed. The Nazis literally threw away a fortune because keeping it was too dangerous. And yet people still search for Nazi gold in Lake Toplitz, refusing to accept that the treasure was paper, not metal, and that it's already been found. The Riese tunnels and underground myths. Lake Toplitz isn't the only place where Nazi treasure myths have taken root. The Riese tunnel complex in southwestern Poland is another obsession for treasure hunters. Riese, German for giant, was a network of massive underground tunnels and chambers built by the Nazis in the Owl Mountains, Góry Suwy, of Lower Silesia during 1943-1945. The complex included several interconnected sites: Wałbrzych, Rzeczka, Osówka, Sobon, and others. Forced laborers, including concentration camp prisoners, dug the tunnels under brutal conditions. Thousands died during construction. The official purpose of the Riese complex was to create bomb-proof headquarters and manufacturing facilities for Nazi leadership and war production as Allied bombing intensified. But the tunnels were never completed, and their exact intended use remains unclear. This ambiguity has fueled speculation. If the Nazis built such massive, secret underground facilities, the thinking goes, surely they used them to hide treasure, gold reserves, stolen art, classified documents, even secret weapons. Searches of the Riese tunnels have found nothing to support these theories. The tunnels are empty. There are no hidden chambers full of gold, no secret vaults, just abandoned construction sites, rusted equipment, and the ghosts of the laborers who died building them. But the myth persists because the tunnels themselves are real, massive, and mysterious. If you can walk through a genuine Nazi underground complex, it's easy to imagine that somewhere, deeper, further, behind a sealed wall, the treasure must be waiting. The Polish Nazi gold train circus. In August 2015, the world's media descended on Wałbrzych, Poland, after two men, a Pole and a German, claimed they had located a Nazi gold train buried in a tunnel near the city. The story was irresistible. A 150-meter-long armored train, allegedly loaded with gold, weapons, and stolen art, had been hidden in a secret tunnel in the final days of the war and never recovered. The two treasure hunters said they had located the train using ground-penetrating radar and would reveal its location in exchange for a 10% finder's fee from the Polish government. The Polish government took the claims seriously, perhaps too seriously. Officials commissioned geological surveys and brought in experts to analyze the radar images. The media coverage was global. Tour companies began offering Nazi gold train tours to Wałbrzych. The local economy boomed on speculation alone. In November 2015, geologists and mining experts conducted a thorough scan of the site using ground-penetrating radar and other technologies. They found nothing: no train, no tunnel, no treasure. The radar images that had sparked the frenzy turned out to be natural geological formations, ice lenses, rock layers, and underground voids that can look to an untrained eye like man-made structures. The Nazi gold train was a combination of wishful thinking, misinterpreted data, and possibly deliberate fraud designed to attract media attention and tourism revenue. The two treasure hunters, who had become minor celebrities, faded from public view. The media moved on, but Wałbrzych kept the myth alive. Today, you can still take Nazi gold train tours of the area. The lack of an actual train hasn't stopped the tourism industry. Think about what happened. Two men made an extraordinary claim based on questionable evidence. The Polish government, the media, and the public wanted so desperately to believe in Nazi treasure that they accepted the claim without sufficient skepticism. When the truth came out that there was nothing there, the myth simply adapted. Now the story is that the train might still be there, just somewhere else, waiting to be found. Treasure hunters, lives and fortunes spent chasing myths. Some people have spent decades, and in some cases their entire lives, chasing Nazi treasure myths. In the 1980s, American divers mounted expeditions to Lake Toplitz and recovered additional counterfeit notes from Operation Bernhard. Some of those notes are now sold at auction to collectors, fetching hundreds or even thousands of pounds per note. But the divers found no gold, and at least one expedition ended in near tragedy when divers barely escaped the dangerous conditions. Karl-Heinz Kleine, the German retiree we mentioned in the Amber Room episode, has spent years and significant personal funds searching for Nazi treasure. Not just the Amber Room, but also rumored gold caches in bunkers and tunnels across Germany. As of his last public statements, he had found nothing but remained convinced the treasure exists. Other treasure hunters have gone bankrupt funding expeditions, purchasing radar equipment, hiring excavation crews, and bribing officials for access to restricted sites. Some have been arrested for illegal digging. A few have died in diving accidents, in tunnel collapses, or from exhaustion and despair after decades of fruitless searching. Why do they do it? Some are motivated by greed, the belief that finding Nazi gold will make them rich. Others are driven by a sense of justice, that recovering stolen treasure and returning it to victims' families is a moral imperative. And some are simply obsessed, unable to let go of the belief that somewhere, buried or hidden, the treasure is waiting. Many of you have asked in comments, if Nazi gold treasure doesn't exist, why do people keep looking? The answer is because a small amount of Nazi treasure does exist and has been found. The Merkers salt mine, the Altarsee art cache, the crates of counterfeit notes in Lake Toplitz. These real discoveries prove that the Nazis did hide things. And if they hid some things, the reasoning goes, surely they hid more. Why we want to believe. Psychology of the treasure myth. There's a deeper reason why Nazi treasure myths refuse to die, and it has nothing to do with evidence or reality. It's psychological. First, greed. The idea of finding billions of dollars in hidden gold is intoxicating. It's the ultimate lottery ticket, life-changing wealth obtained through adventure and cleverness rather than work. People want to believe Nazi gold exists because they want to be the one who finds it. Second, justice fantasies. Many people believe that if Nazi treasure is recovered, it can be returned to victims' families or used to fund Holocaust, education, and remembrance. The search for treasure becomes moralized. It's not about greed, it's about righting historical wrongs. This makes the search feel noble, even when it's based on fantasy. Third, a way to process horror. The Holocaust and Nazi crimes are almost incomprehensible in their scale and brutality. Turning them into treasure hunting adventures makes them more manageable, more story-like, more distant. It's easier to think about hidden gold trains than about gas chambers and mass graves. And fourth, the gap between crime and punishment. Most Nazi officials were never held fully accountable. Many lived comfortable post-war lives. Their stolen fortunes were never fully recovered. The idea of hidden Nazi treasure is appealing because it suggests that justice is still possible, that the Nazis' crimes can still be undone, their stolen wealth reclaimed, their secrets exposed. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The treasure hunt is a distraction. Every hour spent searching for mythical Nazi gold is an hour not spent on documented restitution cases, not spent educating people about the Holocaust, not spent holding institutions accountable for the art and property they still possess. The real Nazi treasure isn't buried in a lake or hidden in a tunnel. It's sitting in bank vaults, hanging on museum walls, held in private collections, and hidden in plain sight under false provenance. We know where much of it is. We just lack the political will to demand its return. Documented versus myth. Drawing the line. Let me be very clear about what is real and what is fantasy. Real and documented. Operation Bernhard produced over 134 million counterfeit pounds. Millions of counterfeit notes and printing equipment were dumped in Lake Toplitz and recovered in 1959 and 1963. The Nazis hid stolen art in salt mines like Altaussee and Merkers, and much of it was recovered. Some Nazi gold and stolen property remains missing, scattered in private collections and bank accounts worldwide. Unproven myths with no credible evidence. Nazi gold hidden in Lake Toplitz. Only counterfeit notes have been found. A Nazi gold train buried near Wałbrzych, Poland. Geologists found nothing. Massive gold caches hidden in the Riese tunnels. Searchers have found nothing. Nazi submarines full of gold at the bottom of the ocean. No evidence. The pattern is clear. Where the Nazis actually hid things, we've usually found them. The Merkers mine, the Altaussee cache, the counterfeit notes in Lake Toplitz, all were eventually discovered because they were real. The things we haven't found after 80 years of searching probably don't exist, and yet every few years a new breaking discovery makes headlines. A treasure hunter claims to have found something, media covers it breathlessly, governments investigate, and then nothing. The claim collapses, the treasure hunter disappears. The cycle repeats. The uncomfortable chart the truth. Here's what we know. In the final days of World War II, the Nazis dumped evidence of their crimes, including millions of counterfeit pounds from Operation Bernhard, into Lake Toplitz in Austria. In 1959, divers found the counterfeit notes and confirmed that the Nazis had used the lake as a dumping site. But they found no gold, no stolen art, no secret fortune. Since then, countless treasure hunters, governments, and media organizations have searched for Nazi gold in Lake Toplitz, the Riese tunnels, and other locations across Europe. None have found credible evidence of hidden Nazi treasure. The Polish gold train was a myth. The Lake Toplitz gold is a myth. The secret tunnels full of stolen art are a myth. But the myths persist because we want them to be true. We want to believe that Nazi crimes left treasure behind, that evil can be turned into adventure, horror into profit, genocide into a treasure hunt. I want you to imagine something. Somewhere today, a researcher is combing through archives, tracking the provenance of a painting in a museum, trying to prove it was stolen from a Jewish family in 1942. That work is slow, difficult, and unglamorous. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't attract funding. And it's the only way real Nazi-looted property gets returned to victims' families. At the same time, a treasure hunter is planning an expedition to search for mythical Nazi gold, raising money, attracting media attention, selling the dream of hidden billions. That work is exciting, dramatic, and almost certainly pointless, but it gets far more attention and resources than the unglamorous archive work. Which one matters more? Some of you will say both, that searching for hidden treasure and recovering documented stolen property are both important. Others will say, the treasure hunts are a waste of time and money that could be better spent on real restitution efforts. The Nazis did steal treasure, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of gold, art, and property. Most of it was recovered, sold, or lost. Some remains missing, but not because it's buried in a lake or hidden in a tunnel. It's missing because it's in private hands, protected by layers of false provenance, legal complexity, and willful ignorance. The counterfeit pounds in Lake Toplitz were real. The Nazi gold train in Poland was not. If you want to find Nazi treasure today, don't search the bottom of a lake. Search museum collections, private galleries, and Swiss bank records. That's where the real stolen fortunes are hiding. If stories like this matter to you, share this video and subscribe. So more people hear them. The myths are seductive. The truth is harder.